Welcome to The Grand Balance, a bi-weekly podcast hosted by two working grandmas navigating the beautiful chaos of work and family. Today, we are very excited about our very unique guest. Becky Livingston is a certified travel and life coach, speaker, and founder of Vital Journeys at Any Age, where she helps women 55 plus reclaim vitality and confidence through long-term travel. While grieving the passing of her daughter, Rachel, she embarked on a 26-month trip around the world, which led to her writing her best-selling book, The Suitcase and the Jar. Today, we are so excited to get travel tips and find out how travel can change our lives. Welcome to the podcast, Becky.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
We're really excited to talk with you because both of us have traveled and love to travel, but haven't done any real personal solo travel. And can't wait to hear your tips and how it can be life-changing.
The solo trip part is really, really interesting. And I'm glad that you brought that up. Because I think what's really important is that as we grow older, our needs change. And we need to prioritize our own desires, if you like, far more than we ever did before. We've often spent years of our lives, right, being caregivers for children or aging parents or employees or husbands or partners. And I think as we grow older, we realize it's our time now. And I think what's really powerful is that when we travel solo, we get that opportunity to sort of really check in with ourselves, to really reconnect with who we are now at this stage in our lives. And one of the great things that solo travel does is it boosts our confidence. It allows us to experience more freedom, more spontaneity. We can do what we want when we want. When we're alone, another wonderful thing about this, and this has been my experience, I mean, everybody resonates with alone. We see people alone in restaurants and so on. So we do understand that when somebody's alone, that it's a wonderful thing to reach out and say, do you want company? Or can I help you? If you see somebody maybe looking around like they're a little bit confused, which may be somebody else, but it may be you. And I think that you're more approachable. So I think when you see like a couple traveling, you would rarely think about going to talk to them because they've got each other. But when you're alone, my experience has been that I'm more likely to help people who are on their own. And I find that people are more likely to help me when I'm on my own. Though I think you're more likely to ask questions when you're on your own. And I think that you are more likely to develop friendships. That's been my experience. I've traveled mostly solo, and I've made some incredible friends around the world who are still friends now. And I really believe that's been because I've been alone. And so I'm a real advocate for solo travel for that, because one of the reasons I'm traveling is I want to connect with people. I want to build connections with other people, and I love knowing that I've got a network of people I know in many countries around the world. I go to visit them, they come to visit me. So I'm sort of a really big advocate for that in that regard.
Well, that's so interesting because one of the tips in business, since we're working grandmas, is they say if you're at a conference and maybe you're an introvert and you go into these big sessions with a lot of people, they say look for the person that's alone.
Oh,
and go to them because they're the ones that are going to want to speak to somebody. So to your point earlier, when you say go look for somebody that's alone, they're going to want that connection as well. And
Absolutely.
that helps both of you.
Well, and I love your positive spin because naturally, as a solo traveler, I feel like, oh, do I look pathetic? Am I lonely? And I like that you turned it into a positive that you can learn from it and get relationships.
And I won't even, when I'm traveling for work, I won't even go to a restaurant by myself.
Is that right?
I will order into the hotel room. I will not sit at the bar by myself. I am not comfortable. Well, one, I don't want somebody to think I'm at the bar looking for somebody. But
Right.
two, I just don't feel comfortable sitting there by myself and not having somebody to talk to. So I think that's I mean, I don't know how you were before you started doing this journey, but how do you get people comfortable with doing that? I would love to travel, but I know I want to travel with friends. So can you explain more?
Maybe some tips on how to get
Yeah,
comfortable or how to get started?
because I would be nervous and afraid.
Yeah, totally. And you know what? Your point about feeling lonely when you eat out is a real big issue. That's really common amongst women travelers, this fear around eating alone. So if I were to give you some tips, or your listeners some tips, I would say, well, first of all, before you do anything, before you even think about going anywhere, I mean, if we think about redefining travel, it does not have to be getting on a plane and going to another country. So anything I would ever suggest would be to start small. If you're going to do something on your own, start small. Go on a little retreat somewhere. Go to another part of your city that you don't know and say, I'm going to spend a day here all on my own, and I'm going to sit around and drink coffee, take my journal, and start to notice who's there, check in with your senses. What do I smell? What do I see? What do I hear? Like really sort of pull back the curtains on what you're experiencing. And I think that helps you get out of your own head and help you see the world. Because I think that's the hard part with thinking, like you said, people might be looking at me and thinking, oh, poor woman, she's on her own, right? So I would start really small. Like I say, if you've got maybe a friend who lives in another state or another province, go visit them. If you hear about something like maybe you're a writer and you might go with others to do a writing retreat. So you're sort of going on your own, but you're with other people. Always having a journal is a great idea because you'd be amazed how many times if you're writing in a journal, even if you decide to pluck up the courage and sit at a restaurant on your own, people might say to you, oh, what, can I talk to you? Or I hope you've got something good to write about it. And if you have a book, they say that's a wonderful thing. People may say, hey, what are you reading? So anything that might prompt comfort for you, but also curiosity in another person. So I think the other thing that's important is before you do anything on your own, anything, is to set an intention. What is it you want from this weekend away or this week away, whatever it is you decide? Because that will really dictate where you decide to go. So if you're wanting sort of a release from the routine of everyday life, that's going to be one intention. You might want some silence and solitude and just sort of to gather yourself and go inside. And that's going to be a different kind of experience. You might want some fun. You might want to celebrate and because you feel like your life's getting a bit boring. And that's going to change again what you decide to do and who you might possibly meet there.
So it's interesting because as working grandmothers, a lot of what we talk about is how crazy busy we are.
Right.
And I know you had a specific reason with the loss of your daughter why you decided to do this. What's some of the reasons why women would want to do this on their own? Meaning, I'm so busy now that I can't even get a vacation in on my own with just my family, right?
Right.
So, what would be some of the things that are pulling? And I could think of one. So, I have a sister-in-law. I think I mentioned to everybody my mother-in-law was in her 90s. She did recently pass away. And my sister-in-law had been taking care of her for years. And when I'm hearing you, I'm thinking she would really, I think, benefit from just some travel, some focus on herself because she's been so selfless, this whole
Right.
time. That would be a great reason. But what are some of the other reasons that we should be doing this for ourselves?
Well, I'm just going to go to your sister for the moment. And can I just ask, is she alone? Does she have a partner?
She does not.
So yes, I can see why you'd really be concerned about her self-care. Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've done the whole, my daughters and working full time. And then I actually moved to a part of British Columbia where my younger daughter, or living daughter is, and I've been a grandma and done all that. And I understand that stress and that feeling of where's time for me. But I think what is really important is we have to not let the lack of time sort of lower our expectations. Like, we can't settle. We have to have higher expectations for ourselves. We got to remember there's just only one time around on this planet, in this body, right? And I know, as I'm sure you do, that life is fragile, and we always think that, oh, I can do it, I can put it off, and so on. So even just keeping that in the back of our mind, this not postponing, I'm a really big believer in that. There's research, a lot of research out about the power of solo travel for the health of the brain. That's becoming a really big area of research about neuroplasticity. And because there are so many neurons firing in our brains when we travel, especially when we travel solo, because it's all about, us having to deal with everything, it's incredibly good for us. And that's a big issue for women as they get older, this whole thing about, cognitive abilities. So that's a really, really big one.
I love that you said that because I would have never thought that. My
Right.
mom actually did pass away and she had Alzheimer's, so I'm very in tune to trying to figure out just to have the cognitive sense to get better and not worse as we age. And I think that's such a good suggestion because I would not have thought about travel or solo travel specifically intertwined with that.
Yeah, I think it is a big one. It's a big one for me too. And my mum died of Alzheimer's as well. So it probably takes up more of a role in my own life too. Yeah, that's what they're really realizing is, as much as you can get out of your comfort zone, shake up your routine, shake everything up. It really, really helps the brain to be challenged. And we've got different parts of our brain that are triggered. Even planning a trip is incredibly powerful. And then actually going on the trip and timing trains or flights or buses or parking or where we're going to stay and who we're going to meet and all those things. And if we're going traveling, as in let's leave the country and go somewhere else, we've got things like the language barrier and we have to sort of learn a few new words. We're going to be asked to try different foods and, maybe use public transit. Those are just a few of the things that really, really matter to us. And of course, then there's another part of the brain that creates memories. And that's what we're doing when we travel, is we are creating new memories that then get stored in another part of our brain. So I can't even just stress enough about how many benefits there are for the brain when we travel. And like I say, if we do it alone, that's just upped that much more
No, it
because
makes
we only
sense.
have ourselves to rely on.
Right. And just think about how invigorated you get when you see something new or experience something that you've never experienced. And then you
Exactly.
also have the luxury of coming home and enjoying grandkids, and then you appreciate that so much too because you've looked forward and you've missed them and you have these new experiences to share.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's been my experience too. And I think, I'm thinking about the story you're telling about your sister is that's such a gargantuan leap, right? To say, right, well, go off and do a solo trip. That's why I think we got to be really gentle with ourselves and just start really, really small. And I think when we start small, we're allowing ourselves to slowly build confidence. It's like anything, right? Any skill that you ever develop, you don't just suddenly, ride a bike around the world or something. You go and you have a little go with training wheels around the block. And I think that's really, really important. We have to take baby steps because it can be overwhelming for women to think about, oh, can I do this on my own? But I think to your point, yes, you come home with a new sense of confidence. You've had this shift in perspective. you've met new people, you've had new experience, your life's become richer. And then you get to share that with the people you love back at home. And I think it makes you happier too, right? I mean, there's, just that whole sense of improved well-being.
So I feel personally I would be scared to death. And it's so funny because I travel so much in my job, but I
Right.
would be scared to death to travel for fun by myself. But as you mentioned, baby steps, would you encourage women to travel together first? I mean, outside of traveling with our spouses, my spouse has limited mobility. So there are some things I'd love to do that he probably can't, but I still don't think I would do it on my own. I'd probably take somebody with me. Are there other baby steps other than like starting local, starting, 2 hours away or whatever to do something with other people, but maybe not your family?
Yes, there's many things like that. And I think that to go with a friend, well, first of all, to just go visit a friend so that you're staying in her house, right? Then you're out of your routine. You're immersing yourself into somebody else's routines and you're working things out together. And that might be a really good place to start. So you're not actually changing too many parameters. You're actually just moving yourself to somebody else's home. Obviously, the next stage would be something like you and a friend going somewhere together. So you actually change location and so does your friend and you work things out and do things together. I think whatever makes you comfortable, you say you're scared to death of that. What would make you comfortable where you would leave your husband and say, right, I'm going to go away for a weekend, hopefully a long weekend with this friend. And then maybe you do that again, or maybe you go with a different friend, or maybe, there's a lot of tour companies now that are accommodating women just like you're describing. So women who are like, I don't want to go anywhere on my own, but I will join a group as a solo traveler. So I won't know anybody else in the group, but I'm going to show up and then be with those people for that week or whatever it is.
I like that because
yeah.
then
Yeah,
it's like we're all in it together still.
Well, and
exactly.
that's a good tip because I think everyone starts from a different level. I don't have a significant other, and I have traveled a lot with friends. So for me, I feel like my natural next step would be to do something on my own. I love planning a trip. I love looking forward to a trip. I love seeing new things. So this is definitely motivating me to maybe think out of the box and do something I haven't done.
Good. That's great. That's what you want to do. So, because it's astonishing just how many women there are over 50 who are traveling. I mean, it's this huge sector of the tourist industry now is women, older solo traveling women who are, like I mentioned earlier, it's my time and I am going to create the space to make this happen for me, for my own well-being. And many of those women have a partner who doesn't want to travel or can't travel and is totally willing to, say, great, go off and do your thing on your own or with a friend. So there's women with spouses and women without and all kinds of scenarios going on. So yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing that tour companies now are recognizing that this is a really huge need for
Yeah.
women to say, yeah, I need a break and this is what I want it to look like.
I love the idea. There's just thinking of all the benefits that you've mentioned, and I'm sure there's so many others that we haven't covered today. I think it's such a great idea for us to kind of think forward and make some plans.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think, wherever you go, there you are. I think the difference is that when you step out of your own home and you go anywhere, having this really curious mindset is going to stand you in good stead, because when you're curious about what you see, what you hear, who you meet, what you're learning, it really shifts the focus away from you and what's happening from you and shines a light on what is out there. And it changes your perspective on
Right.
yourself, other people, the world,
Well, the world is bigger than us.
culture. Absolutely.
It
And
reminds
look at
us
all
of that.
exactly, right. I mean, like I don't know what you had for breakfast, but imagine all the different breakfasts people are eating all over the world right now. And that's all dead normal for them, right?
That's right. So you traveled 26 months, is that correct?
I did. When Rachel died, it was a dying wish to keep traveling. She'd been an avid traveler when she was alive. And so I went back to my teaching job, and a few months after she died, and it just got worse and worse and worse. I knew that I was sort of at breaking point. And after about a year after she died, I thought, you know what? I was 53 at the time. I thought, I'm quitting my job. It was a radical thing to do, but I thought, I'm just going to leave and I'm going to take some of her ashes with me. And I did. And I house sat mainly. And yeah, I was gone for 26 months. I left her ashes all over the world. And then I came home and wrote this whole book about that journey.
So you
But
went to different countries and house sat, and that's how you got to ingrain in the culture of where you were?
that's right, because
That's awesome.
really, and this is a tip. I like long, slow travel. That's really sustainable. It's good for our bodies. It's good for our energy. It's good for the planet. It's not typically how people have in the past traveled. They want to go, right, let's go here, 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 here.
Yep, that's how I travel.
Come home, you're
Yep,
absolutely
that's
exhausted.
us.
I know. And that's
You don't
really,
get the
a
time.
tough,
Right.
tough, tough way to travel. My advice always is go somewhere, set up shop, and just do little trips from there, maybe a day just on your own at home, and then another day where you might go out and do something, and then another day on your own, and another day where you go. That's what's been sustainable for me, because self-care is a really big thing, right? So we need to do what we can to do that. I think the other thing is that when we live in North America, Europe is such a long way away, and there's so much to see there that there's this tendency to want to pack in so much.
Mhm.
When I lived in
Right.
England, of course, it's just on the doorstep, and you can just pop across to the continent, as they call it, very, very easily. So I understand the tendency when we spent a lot of money and we spent a lot of time, on a flight, to want to really pack it all in. But what if we didn't? What if we just went and said, yeah, I stayed in Florence and I went into the city a couple of times, but I just stayed in a local neighborhood and I putzed around, and I got to really sort of check in with myself, and I took some beautiful photos and I did some journaling, and I met, like the list goes on of possibilities.
Did you find a sweet spot as far as time in one area?
Well, actually, after a while, I realized I only want house sits that are at least 1 month long.
Oh, okay.
Because even 1 week was ridiculous. You can't, it's really too hard. I mean, one of the best places I ever stayed was in Tasmania, and I had a 9-week house sit in this beautiful home that was sort of on a mountaintop, and it had 2 walls of floor to ceiling windows. And it had the most epic view that just seemed to go on and on and on. And this was about 8 months into my journey, and my grief was really shifting. And it was kind of like a mirror looking out that window. It was like a mirror to what was happening inside me. And I experienced joy, and I didn't think I would ever feel that again. So that Tasmania has a very special place in my heart because it changed me so dramatically.
Right. So powerful.
Yeah. So you house sat, so are there tools that you used or sites, or how did you find out where you could house sit? Because I think that's something that many of us, if we want to stay
Well, it
local
makes it
for
more
a while.
accessible for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
It does for sure. I used a company. I signed up for a few companies before I went away. One of them is called House Carers, and I got most of my house sits through them.
Hmm.
There's another company called Trusted House Sitters, which is it's become really, really big now.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah. There are many others. I actually wrote a little ebook called A Beginner's Guide to House Sitting, which is
Oh,
you can get on my website. Because I had so many questions. People would say, "How do you do that? How does that work?" And I thought, okay, I've got to really do something with this. So, and the other thing too is you tell people. I'm going to go traveling. I'm going to be house sitting. If you know anybody who might want somebody to look after their home for a month or two, or they're going away on a vacation and they need somebody to care for their cat or their dog or something, because house sitting almost always comes with pet sitting. So there's another difference is if you're house sitting and you're looking after an animal, you can't just go away for a day and sleep
Right.
somewhere overnight. You know, that this is a trade you do. You're in their house looking after their animal, and you know, they're expecting that you're going to do that. So it's rare that you would ever be able to have a night alone, maybe with a cat if they have something sorted out with that. So already that sort of calms you and slows you down, because you say, okay, this is where I'm living for the next month or 2 weeks or whatever it is. I got lots of my house sits also from just word of mouth. I had a friend in San Francisco who said, I heard you were, I did a blog while I was house sitting. And I heard you're house sitting. Do you want to come down and house sit? We're going off to India. I was like, yeah, that would be great.
We'll definitely link your website and your social media and your book, because I think especially people navigating grief, it's such a great resource. Do you have time for a couple rapid fire questions?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Favorite water you've ever seen?
Fraser Island in Australia, Whitehaven Beach.
Good to know. Favorite mountain range you've ever seen?
I'm going to say the Rockies in British Columbia.
Oh, I would agree with that. And I was raised in the Colorado Rockies, but Banff, another level.
Okay.
Hardest city to navigate?
Let's say Bangkok.
And which one was the most difficult due to the language barrier and all of that?
Well, actually, you know what was so interesting? A couple of years ago, I'd finished doing this pilgrim walk in France. And after that, I went to Kazakhstan. I was going to go do a group tour in Uzbekistan with Intrepid Travel. And I thought, I'm going to go to Kazakhstan because the capital city, Almaty, is gorgeous. And I wanted to really push myself out of my comfort zone. But boy, oh boy, that was something else. In Almaty, what was so difficult about that was because nobody spoke English, really. It was all Russian and Kazakh, every single sign everywhere. So I thought, I can't even ask anybody where to go. So I walked and walked and walked. I don't think I ever walked so much as I did in that city because I didn't want to navigate public transit.
That's awesome. Did you ever use any translation apps?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Google Translate. I've been studying French for the last few years. That was another challenge. After my book, I thought, okay, Becky, if you can write a book, you can learn a language. I was never very good at high school. So I thought, nope, I am going to learn a language. So I started doing Duolingo, French on Duolingo.
Oh, nice. Okay, where did you find the friendliest people?
Maybe Chiang Mai.
Interesting. And where do you feel, this is very subjective, I know, but the most beautiful place you've been?
Well, I'm going to go back to Tasmania, to that particular house in close to Launceston in Tasmania, just because my heart was so filled up there that, you know, that will stay with me forever.
I love that. Well, I think that's a great way to end. All of our listeners, we will definitely put all of Becky's information so you can look at her website and her social media and check out her book. Thank you so much for your time today, Becky. We've really, really enjoyed this episode.
Great. Thank you for having me on. I've really enjoyed it too. Cheers.
Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe to the podcast so we can continue to grow our community. And follow us on Instagram at Working Grandmas Podcast, on Facebook at The Grand Balance, a Working Grandmas Podcast, and join our LinkedIn group, Working Grandmas. You can also email us at info@workinggrandmas.com or message us through any of our social media platforms.